you may have remembered when we were doing multiplying polynomials that when we had a binomial times a binomial, we used the distributive property, also abbreviated using the word FOIL, to do this times this, a first term times a first term, the outer, the inner, and the last terms there. And when you multiply these, this would end up giving us x squared, and then the outer would be 6x, the inner would be negative 4x. So it's a plus 6x, a minus 4x, and then the last would give you a negative 24. All right, and then you combine the like terms here. These both have an x. You combine those like terms, and you ended up getting x squared plus 2x minus 24. Well, now we're going to learn the reverse process. We're going to take the quadratic here and go back to the binomial factors there. It's always good to learn that reverse process to be able to undo what you have done. All right, so here, to do this, you'll notice that these last two terms multiplied to give you the final term here. Well, then we're looking for two numbers that are going to multiply to give us this 12. These two middle terms had coefficients that were the two last terms here, and they added to become that middle coefficient. So what we're looking for is two numbers that multiply to give us this, but add to give us the coefficient of the middle term there. All right, so we are going to put a set of parentheses in. We're going to put an x here and an x here, because x times x is going to give us, this x times x is going to give us the x squared. Since we start with an x squared, we know that these two first terms, just like these two, ended up giving us the first term of our trinomial there. All right, so what two numbers are going to multiply to give me 12? Well, I'm going to start listing the factors of 12. So here's 12. It can be factored as 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4. So, and if I try going higher than that, I just end up repeating the same factors I had here. So now, what two factors, which pair of factors here is going to add to give me the 7? Well, 1 and 12 is 13, 2 and 6 is 8, 3 and 4, that's the magic pair that's going to give me the positive 7. So I'm going to put a plus 3 here and a plus 4 here. And I now believe that this is my factored result, the binomial factors of this quadratic. To test it, I would do the FOIL, that distributive property, to confirm. X times x is going to give me x squared. X times 4x is a plus 4x. 3 times x is a plus 3x. And 3 times 4 is a 12. And these two do combine to give me 7x. So when I do the FOIL here, I do end up with that same original. So this does double check. Okay, I'm going to go through these three problems here. If you'd like to, you can pause the video, give these three a try, and then come back in and watch it, because it's always a good idea to try it on your own. All right, welcome back. If you did pause, here we're going to go. We're going to start off by drawing a set of parentheses, because we know we're going to have an x and an x. And we're listing the factors of 4. 4 is either 1 times 4 or 2 times 2. And since this is a positive 4, we know that these two numbers either have to both be positive, because positive 1 times positive 4 gives you a positive 4, 2 times 2 gives you a positive 4. But we've got a negative here over here. So how do we get a negative when adding, but a positive when multiplying? Well, the only way that could happen is if both factors were negative, because a negative times a negative will give you a positive, which would be the positive factor on the end, the positive result on the end here, and a negative plus a negative will result in the negative middle coefficient there. So we know it's going to be both negative. And which of these factors are going to add up to give me the middle coefficient of negative 4? Well, it's got to be the negative 2 and negative 2, because negative 2 plus a negative 2 is going to give you a negative 4. And negative 2 times negative 2 is going to give you a positive 4. All right. And if you FOIL this, distribute, you're going to get x squared minus 2x minus 2x plus 4. And these two will combine to give you the 4x, so that does double check. Okay, now in this example, I'm going to draw the brackets, the parentheses there. We're looking for the factors of negative 63. Well, in order to get it to be negative, I would have to have one of the results be negative, one of the factors be negative. So I have 1 times 63, 2 does not go into it evenly, 3 goes in 21 times. Let's work with the 4. Now 4 does not go into it, 5 does not go into it, 6 doesn't, 7 does. 7 goes in 9 times. Now, it could be either that first factor that's negative, or we could work with those same first factors being positive, and the second factor could be negative, negative 21 and negative 9 over here, like this. So now we're looking for which pair of these is going to add to give us a negative 2. Well, negative 1 and negative 63, these two, no. Negative 7 and positive 9. Negative 7 and positive 9 result in a positive 2, not a negative 2. So it must be the 7 and the negative 9. That must be the pair that we can work with. All right, so we'll put an x plus 7 and an x minus 9. And when you do the FOIL, you're going to get x squared plus 7x minus 9x minus 63, and these two do combine to give you the negative 2x, that is the center. Okay, now in this one, we're going to start off with those parentheses, just like we have been. We're looking for the factors of negative 30 this time, 30, which is going to be, let's see, we have the 1 and the 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, 4 does not go in, 5 goes in 6 times. Now that's just all the factors there. Now if we assume the first one's negative, that's what we'll be looking at here. If we assume the second term is negative, we would have these terms over here. All right. Now we're looking for the sum of those factors that's going to be a positive 7. Well, that's not going to be positive 7. That's going to be, but negative 3 and positive 10, when you add those, you're going to get a positive 7. So that means that our factors are going to be the x minus 3 and an x plus 10. And when you FOIL it, or do the distributive property there, you're going to end up with the outer is going to be, the outer is going to be, outer is going to be a plus 10x, the inner is going to be a minus 3x, the last is going to be a negative 30. These two will combine to give you that positive 7, so this does double check. So this is your correct factoring here, this is a correct factoring here, this was the correct factoring here, and we always should box or circle our final answers. Now, in this video, we focused on quadratics that had an a value of 1. Now, what that means, in this standard form of quadratics, when you have ax squared plus bx plus c, where a, b, and c are some sort of number, we're looking at the ones where we just had ax squared. There was basically no number in front of the x squared. When there's no number in front, it's understood to be a 1. Okay? When that happens, you'll notice that you may have seen the pattern here where when you have two positive, when b and c are both positive, you ended up getting an x plus something and an x plus something. So, for example, if I have x squared plus 8x plus 7, I would know that my two factors are going to have a plus inside there. When you have a minus b, a negative b, and a positive c, the factors both have to be negative because the only way you can multiply two numbers and get a positive, and add those same two numbers to get a negative is if they were both negative, because a negative times a negative gives you a positive. A negative plus a negative gives you a negative. And here's an example of one where we had a negative and positive, and we get that result here. And if you have a positive b and a negative c, one of the factors, the only time two numbers are going to multiply to give you a negative is if one's positive and one's negative. And the only way they're going to add up to be a positive is if the larger of the two factors happens to be positive. So here we have the example of x squared plus 6x minus 7. The factors of the negative 7 would be a negative 1 and a positive 7. And when you add those together, you'll notice the 7 has to be larger, the positive 7 has to be larger to get that positive 6. Whereas here, if you have a negative b and a negative c, again, the only way two numbers can multiply to give you a negative is if they're opposite signs. The only way they're going to add opposite signs to get a negative is if the larger one is negative. And there's an example of that happening here. All right, hopefully this video has been helpful, and if so, please subscribe to my channel. I'd love to have you on there. Hopefully I can help a lot of people here. I do not monetize my channel because I do not want commercials or anything interrupting the viewing here. I do not get any money from it. I just like to help people, and hopefully this has been helpful. Thank you.